Right, welcome to this week's edition of the Old Paratrooper podcast, and I am joined today. Now, the word legend gets bounded around far too often, but today we are joined by a bona fide, real-life legend, and that is former Battle of Britain veteran, former SAS veteran, and Chelsea pensioner, 102-year-old John Morris. How you doing, John? All right?
I'm fantastic, thank you.
Well, look. It's an absolute pleasure to have you on. I am honoured that you've taken the time to come on the podcast. It means an awful lot for me, for you coming on. I know we've had a technical difficulties, but it looks like we're there now. But so what I like to do with all the podcasts, John, is I like to start at the beginning, and I like to get a bit of a background about yourself, kind of where you grew up and your early childhood years, and then we will just run with it and let you chat about your amazing career. So over to you, John.
Right. My name is John G. Morris. There's another Morris here. I'm at the Chelsea Pension Hospital in Chelsea for retired soldiers. It's a fantastic place, and I'd like to recommend that anybody interested to have a look around the Chelsea Hospital are very welcome. We have guided tours here, and you'll find it very interesting. For a very small sum, they'll take you around for 2 or 3 hours around the hospital. You'll see Margaret Thatcher's grave where she's buried her husband, and a fantastic history of Chelsea, because this is where the Chelsea Pictures Flower Show is shown and many other shows. And just ring the hospital and they'll arrange a tour for you. And I'd also like to thank, while I'm on here, the Pilgrim Bandits who brought me here. They hijacked me and got me here, actually. They told me to take me to Hawaii, and they finished up in the hospital because I am from Australia. I was there 40 years.
Awesome stuff. They hijacked you, did they? And you thought you were going to Hawaii, and you ended up in the Chelsea pensioners' home then.
Pardon?
So yeah, you got hijacked, did you?
Oh yeah, they said they were taking me to Hawaii. That's a joke, that is. But I'm very happy here. The people, the staff are good, and I've got lots of friends. I've got more friends who I had in Australia, but I miss Australia very much. I was there for 40 years.
I bet you missed the weather.
Like doing is talking to schools. If anybody likes me to come and see their school and have a chat with them, I'm very happy to do so. I can talk to 100 years of experience, and I think the children should know how their forefathers sacrificed for them, which I'll talk about later on.
No, awesome stuff, John. It sounds like you're still very, very active, and you're still kind of sharing your experiences. And you're quite right there. It's good that you keep on kind of sharing, and people should always remember the kind of sacrifices that soldiers like yourself are given for the country. So now that's absolutely fantastic, John. And like I say, I'd like to get a bit of a background about you and start off with kind of where you grew up and all that stuff. So if you're happy to talk about that.
I was born in the Cotswolds, up in a place called Lampen. My father actually had a rep company, and he had a show going on at a big factory there called Listers, and it was actually Sweeney Todd, the Barbara Street, Demon Barbara Beach Street. And then we moved to Bournemouth, then I moved to Waterslade in Kent, where I went to a school there, junior school, which is a little cast iron school, very small, and I was there when I was 5 years old. Most things I remember about that I was a very nervous child. I don't know why I was, but maybe because I was a twin. I lost my twin brother when he was 6 weeks old. Anyway, the school was a good school, good master. I used to get the cane quite a lot, but still that's another story. But I used to be scared of the dark. And I used to work, I sang in a choir, I did for a little while until they found out the choir was going flat. So they sacked me from the choir and put me pumping organs. Anyway, night time in the winter, it was dark when we finished and I was frightened of going home by myself. I used to wait for a bus to take me back to my home, which is up in Robin Hood Hill in Waterslade. And one day I thought, this is no good. So I decided to do something I was scared of. There's a shortcut through a wood. And I thought, well, I go through there, I won't be scared anymore. So I plucked up courage and went through the wood. And after that, I was never scared of the dark. So I tell children today, if you're frightened of doing something, try to do it or do something very similar. And after that, you won't be scared anymore. And a lot of experiences like that through my life, like when I went to high school to Snodhurst when I was 12. I actually was bullied because I was a bit different from other children, because I come from a better higher class family probably, and I wore glasses and they called me Four Eyes, and one chap used to bully me a lot. So one day I thought, this is no good. So during the school holidays, I joined a boxing club in Gillingham, Kent. Had 6 weeks of boxing lessons, 2 or 3 times a week. When I got back to the school after holidays, he started bullying me again, so I gave him a damn good hiding. Don't be frightened. If you're frightened of anything, try to do something to stop you being frightened.
Good advice, John. Good advice. I like it.
Now, my army days, I joined the Territorial Army when I was 16 and a half years old. I was working for a company called Hugh Wiley in Rochester, Kent, working in a warehouse, moving furniture around and delivering furniture at 14 years old. He invited me, he was in the Territorial Army in Sittingbourne. He invited me to join him and come with him and see if I'd like to join. So at 16 and a half, I joined the 89th Heavy Anti-Aircraft Regiment in Gillingham, Kent, in Sittingbourne rather. And when I was 17 years old, the war started, and I was called up. I remember I was sitting in my garden in Waterslade. The big fat policeman came along and said, your country needs you. So I had to go to report in Darling Downs near Rochester, where my regimental headquarters were. And I joined the regular army then, 89th Heavy Anti-Aircraft Regiment. I remember that very well because they didn't have any uniforms then. They didn't have any greatcoats. They had a uniform but no greatcoats. And when they went on sentry duty, they couldn't give us rifles because they gave us pickaxe handles because they didn't have enough rifles to go through. You remember rightly that Chamberlain came back and said, peace in our time, they started disarming while Hitler was harming. So we were in a terrible state when the war started. Anyway, 1939, I was called up and we were stationed in the hop field near Sittingbourne, and I was a gun layer. We had the old 3-inch guns with the wooden wheels. They used to need greasing every now and again. Well, they're supposed to be mobile. Unless you grease the wheels, they'd burn out. So that's how antiquated we were. No rifles, no greatcoats. The army was in a terrible state. But of course, we had Dunkirk before then. Of course, we lost a lot of all of our equipment then at Dunkirk. Now, regarding Dunkirk, I always remember it was in 1940, I think it's April to May 1940, and the 340,000 British and colonial troops evacuated from Dunkirk. But the real heroes were the 40,000 that stayed behind doing a rearguard action to allow the Dunkirk evacuees to escape. So at that time, England was completely, absolutely in terrible state, had no equipment, no guns, and hardly anything. Anyway, while I was at Sittingbourne, the Battle of Britain started, I think it was in 1940. I think it was in July 1940, and it finished in October 1940. And our job was actually up and down from Dover to London, mobile guns firing at the German bombers coming over, 100 or 200 at a time, split them up so the fighters could get at them. And that's our job. And I remember at one time I was stationed at Canby Island in the oil wells, and it was very, very dodgy there because the bombers were trying to blow the oil wells up, and we were there for about 6 weeks. And I was very glad when we went from there back to the war room. So I was right through the Battle of Britain, fighting sometimes 12 or 14 hours a day. One of the things that made me, I laugh about now, when beginning of the war, a Dornier flying boat was coming over, and I was a gun layer, so I laid the guns to fire at the Dornier flying boat, doing reconnaissance. Unfortunately, my shell went by the kitchen chimney, and the blast of the shell going by the kitchen chimney, which was an oast house, knocked it down, and nobody had any breakfast that time, so they weren't very happy about that. So a lot of amusing things happened during the war, but the war is not glamorous. A lot of the children think it is. It's not. It's not glamorous. So when the Battle of Britain finished, they transferred me to another regiment because my regiment was going overseas, and I couldn't go because I was too young. I was only 17 and a half. So they transferred me to the SAS Regiment. And then we continued fighting German bombers, moving from one town to another. I remember being at Western-super-Mare, and then bombed Western-super-Mare and bombed Bristol. And I remember quite well when it was bombed, my job was to go out and help recover bodies from bomb buildings and wounded people. It was very, very scary. It was very frightening and makes me very, very sad to think of that. And then from then we moved up to Glasgow, and that was in 1942, yes. And we on the Clyde, because Glasgow was being bombed, and we was there for a few weeks, and then we got mobilised, and we went on Operation Porch to North Africa. And North Africa was the biggest landing of any invasion in any country. There's 200 ships took part. There was 3 battleships, 5 aircraft carriers, 7 cruisers, 38 destroyers, and the rest were 200 ships were troop ships and cargo ships. And over 210,000 British and colonial troops landed in Algiers. And we were fired on by the French, who were siding with the Germans at the time. And they sank 2 of our ships, and we sank 3 of theirs, I think. So then they moved me down to Beaune. Now we, unfortunately, the ship carrying our guns in Beaune was actually torpedoed, and we lost all our guns. So when we landed at Beaune in Algeria, we had no guns. So they put me on the. We had no guns, and all we had was I was a bring gunner as well. And they put us in a place near the port, near St. Cloud, and they gave me the job of sitting on the top of a flat type roof, twin browns, ring guns firing at low-flying aircraft that's coming to bomb us. And I was there for some time, and eventually I got hepatitis. I was evacuated to a hospital, and I was evacuated, and while I was being evacuated to a convalescent camp to come back to my regiment, the Raiding Support Regiment, which is a branch of the Special Air Service, came asking for volunteers. I was a young lad and I was bored, so I did volunteer. And I was transferred to somewhere in Palestine where we did our training, Raiding Support Regiment. And our job actually was to join up with the 8th Army for the invasion of Italy. And I will pause a moment. Hello?
Hello, yeah, I'm here, yeah.
So we did 6 weeks training. I was one of the first ones to volunteer for the RSR. And we did a special forces training. It was very, very hard. 6 weeks of hard work, hard training. And parachute jumping, I jumped out. I jumped out of a Wellington bomber through the bomb doors with 5 in a stick. I later changed into the Hastings, I think, afterwards. And I know that I didn't like jumping. I was scared still, and I think I was pushed out in the end. But I did land all right on my unit. And later on, we was on the landing in Salerno, where the Italian landing, that was in 1943. That's right, 1943, September 1943, I think it was. And we was there for some time. We kicked the Germans out of Salerno. And then they put me on a signals course to learn new codes and brush up on my course code for a few weeks. And while I was there, I got hepatitis. And or something, I got something. It certainly wasn't a big deal, I know that. And they transferred me then to a rest camp on the Mount of Vesuvius in April 1944, or March 1944. It erupted on March 1944, and I was on the side of Vesuvius when it erupted. So I recommend don't go on any volcanic island while I'm around. It might be a bit dangerous.
No, absolutely.
Anyway, after that, they went back to where our regiment was, which is in Ola di Bari, which is on the Baltic side of Italy, and was there for some time. And in a convent, actually, pretty the ladies were still there, but they weren't. And then we did operations in Yugoslavia. We joined actually what they call Land Forces Adriatic. Land Forces Adriatic was actually a general, an Australian general actually, I think, who was in charge. And our job was helping the partisans mostly in Albania, Yugoslavia, and Greece and places like that, trying to stop the Germans getting back to the Russian front because they're trying to get from Greece to the Russian front. So my first operation there was in Yugoslavia, and we managed to kick the Germans out of Dubrovnik, and they moved up to Casino. I was very happy I wasn't there because there's actually there's 8,000 British troops killed in Casino, 3,000 Polish and 22,000 Germans killed in 3 months. It's terrible.
Wow.
But I was in Yugoslavia at the time. They moved us up from there to a place called Montenegro. And in Montenegro, my job was there to train the partisans, Tito's partisans, to use the new radio set and to learn the Morse code. And I did that for 3 weeks. And we all slept in a big wooden, this is Tito's headquarters, by the way, at that time. And I slept in a big wooden hut there. And a lovely young lady sleeping next to me and her partisan girls, everybody was there, men and women. And she should go to bed, sleeping bag next to mine. And I noticed that when she went to bed, she always had a string of hand grenades around her waist. And so I thought, well, this is dodgy. I'm not going to try anything. She might pull a pin out by mistake. Anyway, they were very courageous girls, very beautiful. And they used to go out fighting with their men. Exactly the same. Come back sometimes bleeding and shot to pieces. And our job was to try to support them with heavy armaments, because our regiment consisted of heavy armaments like machine guns, mortar guns, gun houses, anti-tank guns, and anti-aircraft guns. So we supported the partisans wherever they were operating. I was there for some time. Eventually, I was up in Montenegro, and one day the LRDG were there, the SAS were there, the Special Boat Service was there, I think. And I got very friendly with a chappie in the long range desert group. And one day he came to me, he said, John, he said, would you like to come to Bone and pick up, don't come to Barry, I'll pick up on Dubrovnik, pick up Christmas mail. And I said, I'll have to ask my boss, because there are different regiments. And I said to my boss, can I go with Blondie Smith to pick up the Christmas mail? He wants me to ride shotgun, because I was a machine gunner. He said, that's all right, you can go. He said, but be careful. Anyway, on the way to Dubrovnik, we had a few rakias, which were very strong Yugoslavian drink. We didn't realise that. And when we managed to pick the mail up all right. Coming back, we lost our way. And started driving through a German village. This is Christmas Eve in 1944. And my Johnny said to me, Johnny said, if the Germans were outside drinking schnapps at Christmas Eve, and said, oh, don't kill anybody, it's Christmas Eve, he said. Just fire over their heads and scared the life out of them. So we drove through the village, managed to get away and got back to our unit. Unfortunately, I didn't have any mail, but I got their mail back and everybody's very happy. So after that, I'm trying to refresh my memory a bit. We went back to Italy and went back to our unit. And after a short time, we had an operation then in Albania, doing exactly the same thing, trying to stop the Germans getting to the rock in front. And our job was to actually sabotage the bridges and railway lines and everything like that. In Albania, Sarandi, there's a transit camp where the Germans used to stop there to refresh and rearm, carry on right through to get to the Russian front. It was Italian place. And while I was up, and they gave me a camel, but they gave me a mule when I was in Albania, and told me to go up on this mountain top, send fire orders back to the breach where our guns and everything were. And we were shelling the transit camp. Anyway, while I was up there, I was with a sergeant, was with me. Not been very long, and the Italians sent out I think it was Italians, sent out a fighting patrol because they obviously got our signal. And there's about 8 Italian soldiers came along, and they took us prisoner because we couldn't fight. We actually just saw our equipment and everything. Taken prisoner, put in a blockhouse in Sarandi. While I was there, my colleague said, When they asked you questions, he said, I know very well that the Balkan Air Force is coming over tomorrow morning to drop leaflets that told them to surrender. They were surrounded. He said, but tell them they're coming over to bomb the place, he said, and we'll try to get out. So anyway, when we were questioned, we told them that. They said, tomorrow morning, I said, you're going to all be blown to pieces because the Balkan Air Force only consisted of 5 planes anyway. It's going to come over and bomb them. The Italians been a bit scary. As soon as the air raid sounded, they scarpered the shelter, leaving just one guard outside this blockhouse we were in. And my sergeant actually had a little ladies' automatic in his water bottle somewhere. He managed to unsolder the water bottle, take that automatic out and start the guard up when the air raid sounded, because everybody else is scarpered. He managed to take the prisoner, the guard prisoner, he opened it, the door of the prison where we were in, blockhouse. We managed to escape, we tied him up, gagged him, we managed to escape and got back to our lines. So then I was evacuated then. I got malaria for some reason or other. Must have picked it up in Africa when I was there, and it lay dormant because I was very sick with malaria and I was evacuated to Italy. And while I was in Italy, my unit went to Greece, and unfortunately, all of my friends were killed. And I managed to. I was very upset about that because I felt I'd let them down badly. I should have been there. I was in hospital, the Greece combat finished, and my unit came back to Italy. And we were waiting for it being transferred back to England because the war had finished. But they gave me the job actually at the time. What was to guard prisoner of war camp. I guarded a German prisoner of war camp, and most of the Germans were ex-Rommel soldiers. And we got on very well with them, playing cards with them and joking with them, because we really admired the German army in Africa, and admired the British troops actually admired Rommel. So we got on very well with them, and I was there for some time playing cards. We started having the housing schools. It's called Ludo now at the lingo. Ludo, I don't know. It's called housing. So I was transferred back to England eventually, back in 1945, late 1945, a place called Borough Bridge in Yorkshire. And our job then was to be trained to actually parachute into Japanese-held territory, to prisoner of war camps, to release the British prisoners before the Germans killed them. Thank God the war finished in Italy then, and we were actually demobbed. I left the army then, back in 1946. So I was there served from 1939 to 1946. And I went back into the civilian life, completely untrained, didn't know what to do. Eventually I got a job locally in England for a little while, and then moved up to Bristol. Because a couple of my friends who were in the 89th Regiment were in Bristol, and they asked me to come up and join them. I went and got a job in Bristol, and got the job first of all with the company called Rediffusion, which was actually wiring the houses for radio in those days. And then from then on, I did various other jobs, including my 2 friends were both musicians. One was a drummer, one was a bass player, and they wanted me to help them form a dance orchestra, which I did. I managed to do it, and we did a lot of work for some time until the big band became unnecessary. And did a lot of work for the Duke of Beaufort, and it did the Beaufort balls. I hunt balls and places like that, and moved right down as far as Bertha Tydfil in Wales to the Labour Club there. And I suppose the dance also lasted about 3 years before big band became obsolete. So I did various other jobs and everything. And one of the things which was, I suppose, one of my biggest mistakes was when I went on the Laconia cruise trip to the Canary Islands at Christmas time. My father-in-law at that time paid for the cruise, and we went. I took his wife, his mother, grandmother, and my wife, and my son, who was about 3 years old, on the cruise. Unfortunately, the ship caught on fire, and the ship was eventually, the Laconia was eventually evacuated. And I put my family on a lifeboat. Unfortunately, I couldn't get my mother-in-law on the same lifeboat, and I put her on another lifeboat. Unfortunately for her, the lifeboat was very badly maintained, and the davits snapped and tipped everybody in the water. My mother-in-law's body was never recovered. She was a lovely lady. Anyway, I was quite happy. I thought I'd saved their lives, and I stayed on board because there's no more lifeboats available. And one thing had happened during that time. We had a stateroom, and my younger son, was in the stateroom. We were in the ballroom having lunch, having dinner on her. And when the shop caught on fire, there was a young lady supposed to look after the children in the various rooms, cabins, up and down, make sure they're all right while we was away. And she left the kids on their own in the staterooms with places on fire. And I came back when it caught fire to try to get my son out. And I couldn't get to the stateroom because there was too much smoke and I didn't have any mask or anything. And the German sailor came up and said, "What's wrong, sir?" I said, "My son is in a certain stateroom and I can't get him because I can't get through the smoke." He said, "Don't worry, sir. I'll go and get him for you." And he went and brought my son back, saved my son's life. That's amazing, really. 1 minute I'm fighting the Germans, next minute the Germans saving my son's life. That's unbelievable. 128 people were killed on the Laconia, and I was in the water for 6 hours before I was picked up. And eventually I was picked up by a ship called the Montcalm, and I was dropped off at Casablanca. I was flown back to England eventually. And I heard that my mother-in-law was dead, which is very, very sad. So don't go on a cruise with me either. It's very dangerous. I did various other jobs. I did lots of went skiing. Took up a hobby powerboat racing. And we won the British Championship with Class 3 racing 1 year and presented with a cup by Prince Charles, who's now the King. And not Prince Philip, rather. And it was Grosvenor Hotel, and that was a great honour as far as I was concerned. And did quite a lot of powerboat racing. I had a second marriage which unfortunately failed. At the time, I was very lucky. I owned 4 houses in Bristol. But after the Labour Party got in later on, when credit was very impossible, I actually had to. My marriage failed. I gave the houses to my ex-wife, and I loved her very much and very upset when the marriage failed. And unfortunately, I lost it by the time I paid all my bills and everything like that. I didn't have much left, so I My daughter's in Australia, so I went to Australia and I was there for 40 years. I met a lovely lady there who looked after me for 35 years. And eventually, as I said, I came back to England. And oh, by the way, I had a restaurant in Mallorca as well, one of my failures. Unfortunately, I had a 5-star restaurant at Santa Ponza. And unfortunately, the owner of the restaurant, the building, built another building next door, tried to, but unfortunately got into financial difficulty, went into liquidation. Alfonso sent the police in, or I think the government at that time, closed us down. Not only closed us down, but took all my stock, which is about $10,000 worth of stock, £10,000 worth of stock, and closed me down. And I had to come back to England, unfortunately. So everything wasn't all that good. But my time in Australia, I went there with very little money. I joined a company called Encyclopedia Britannica, and I had a very good many years with them until they actually closed down because of the nobody bought books anymore. And after I did various other jobs, and I suppose, really speaking, I'm very lucky in lots of ways because I suddenly realised at my age, at 102, the material things are not very important. I'm very interested in talking to children at schools because I think they need to know the great sacrifice their forefathers made for them. They don't seem to know very much about the Second World War or Hitler or anything like that. I do my best to explain to them how important it is. And I tell them about my life when I was young and how different it is. That we didn't need to have mobile. We had no such thing as mobile phones or television. I didn't have any radios. Only had two little radio sets using the crystal sets. They were. We used to get QLO, which is the London station, if we were lucky. The children enjoyed themselves and they had much more fun. We used to find trees, footballs about, play cricket, have sports. We never bothered with drugs, never heard of drugs apart from in Stockholm, the Chinese using opium pipes. We didn't need drugs to enjoy ourselves. Children today, I think the worst thing that's happened to children, being honest with you, is mobile phones, because they can get things on the mobile phone they shouldn't be listening to. They get fear. With older children, peer pressure is the hardest thing. Children get a lot of peer pressure. In other words, they get talked into going to concerts. Okay, that's great, but then they get talked into taking drugs. You don't need drugs to enjoy yourself. Drugs will kill you. Please, any children listening to this, you don't need drugs to enjoy yourself. We didn't need drugs to enjoy ourselves. We didn't know what drugs were. So, the hardest thing for a teenager to do is to say no. It's easy to say no if you want to. I said no. I said no to cigarettes. I said no to drinking. And I'm healthy. I'm 102 years old. When people ask me why am I 102 years old, because I said no. So please, you don't need drugs. You don't need this. You don't need that. You just need to enjoy yourselves. Talk to each other instead of using your mobile phones all the time. So I think that's the worst thing that's happened for you, mobile phones.
No, I do agree with you on that one, John. It is a thing. I mean, I was probably one of the last generations, being 44 now, that grew up without them. They weren't around when I was a kid, and I had a really, really good childhood. I was out climbing trees, playing army, doing all that good stuff, playing on bikes. And I've said this many times on various podcasts, that kids nowadays, they don't seem to do that a lot. They're playing on computers, they're on their mobile phones, and like you quite rightly they said, they get peer pressures. They see stuff on social media that they shouldn't be seeing at that age. So I agree. I'd take me back to a time when mobile phones didn't exist, and it was a much better time. Yeah, take me back. Take me back to a time when mobile phones didn't exist. It was a much better time.
When they didn't have mobile phones?
No, not when I was a child. No, it was they didn't come in till when I was about 18. Mobile phones.
Well, I remember my first mobile phone as big as a house brick.
Yeah, that was about the same one I had when I was 18. It was a massive, big thing that you used to have to carry around. It was huge.
Another thing which I mentioned about during my peacetime, I got friendly with two friends of mine who were in the greeting card business, and they used to go skiing together. And one day we went to a place called Algeria in the south of France. And I'd never skied before in my life, on the snow anyway. And they said to me, I joined the nursery slope for a day. And after a couple of days on the nursery slope, I was just about to get around slowly. They said to me, come with us, we'll look after you, John. They took me up on the glacier and said, there you are, John, make your way down, we're going down. They started, left me on top of this glacier. So they took about 10 minutes to get down. I took about 2 hours. By the time I got down, I was black and blue all over. So they thought it was a big joke, but it wasn't a very big joke as far as I was concerned. But we had lots of fun together.
No, it sounds like it, John. And am I right in thinking your nickname is the Cat?
Well, they called me Cat Morris. They reckon I had 9 lives.
Well, listening to your story, it sounds like you've evaded death and had some very, very lucky escapes over your lifetime.
Well, I was on Vesuvius when it erupted. I was on Laconia when it sunk. I was in the Salerno landing. I was in Albania, Yugoslavia, in Farda, firing back, of course. I was very lucky. The Lord looked after me. I'm sure somebody up there is looking after me. I really believe in that.
Yeah, it would appear that you have a guardian angel that's looking after you.
Well, I've got guardian angels here as well. They're very good people here. And Matt Helleran and other people who have been great friends of mine, Jim, Tony, another great friend of mine, Sarah Adams, who was enticed me to come here. She's in admin here. She's no longer here at the hospital. She looks after me, and I got Scotty here sitting with me at the moment. He's been a great friend of mine. I got the family here, but I miss my family in Australia because I miss my partner who looked after me for 35 years. She's been very good to me, and I still look after her as best as I can.
Amazing, John. Well, look, I'm conscious now. We've been chatting for around about an hour. Your story is absolutely amazing. When I first read about you, I thought to myself, I have to have this guy on the podcast. I want as many people as possible to hear your story. And like I say, I think my viewers and followers are going to absolutely love this podcast and listening to you. It's not very often that I'm kind of lost for words. I kind of talk a lot, but you had me there. I was just listening. That's why I wasn't saying a lot when you were talking. I was just listening about your experiences, which I just find truly amazing.
Because I know my voice isn't quite like it was when I was 20 years old. But
yeah, well,
I would like to do more schools. So any school wants me to come along, because they arranged me to get there. I don't ask them for very much, but if I do go to them, I'd like them to make a contribution, a small contribution to Pilgrim Bandits. You can find them on Facebook, Pilgrim Bandits.
Okay, well, again, for all the viewers and followers that are listening, Pilgrim Bandits, go along, check them out. And yeah, I mean, I'm sure it would be brilliant if you could kind of get out and talk to way more schools, and again, get their messages out, John.
And I hope one day you come to London so I can meet up with you.
I'd absolutely love that. Now that you mentioned about kind of they do the tours of the kind of Chelsea Pensioners Care Home, I would absolutely love to come down. Me and my partner's a firefighter as well, Hannah, my fiance. So we would love to come down and have a tour of the kind of the Chelsea Pensioner Care Home.
That's here. And the husband.
Say again, sorry.
Margaret Thatcher is buried here, and her husband.
Well, I'd love to have a walk round and see the ground. So I'll have to kind of arrange it. I'll speak to Scott after we finish and see if we can sort something out. And like I say, me and my fiance, I'd love to come down, and I'd absolutely love to meet you in person, John.
Thank you very much. I hope I can help you, and look forward to getting a copy of the podcast.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, John. It's been an absolute pleasure.